All right, guys, we are back in my garage for another video, and today we are getting ready to install my low pressure fuel pump upgrade, but the problem is the car still has a lot of fuel inside of the tank, and that's something that you can definitely just drive your car around and wait for the fuel to burn off, but I'm kind of impatient and in a hurry, so I want to get this out of the fuel tank immediately. So what we're going to do is show you guys how you can basically drain your fuel tank as quickly as possible in case you want to switch over to a different fuel. Maybe you want to switch over to E85, or you got a bad tank of gas and you just want to completely flush out the system. This is the process that I recommend in order to make that change happen. So let's go ahead and hop over to the car and I'll show you guys how it's done.
Now, as always, for everybody that's new to the channel, I create these videos to help keep you updated on the latest developments in our community, as well as discuss technical topics so that we have a better understanding of how our engines work. So if you're interested in more videos like that, be sure to subscribe because there will be a lot more coming out in the future.
So we're going to come around the side here, and I think the first thing most people assume is, you just get a couple gas cans that you can pump the fuel in, and then you suck it out from where you fill in your gas. But the problem is, if you open this up and actually go in here in the filler neck, a lot of times there's a little like filter or valve or something that prevents you from easily shoving a hose down in there to suck the fuel out like you're able to do on older cars. So that's not something I really want to do, especially because, if you damage it, it can cause issues. The other problem, though, that's even bigger is, like we've talked about, there is two sides to your fuel tank. So there's a side on the left side of the car and the right side of the car. And then it has that big hump in the middle that goes over your drive shaft. So all of the fuel starts on the left side of the car and then it transfers over to the right. So you have that little hose that goes over the hump, and the pump is actively pumping fuel. And then while the fuel is flowing, it's sucking fuel from the left side of the tank to the right side. Now, if the pump isn't running, none of that fuel on the left side is getting transferred over. So even if you were to put a hose in here and suck out all the fuel you could, you'd only suck out fuel from like a third of the tank, only the right side of the tank, because that's all you can reach. So really the proper way to do it in our cars is to run the fuel pump, and that will pull the fuel from the left side to the right side and then pump it out of the fuel pump. Now there are a couple different ways you can do that. Hopefully you kind of get the idea. It just really depends on where you want to pull fuel from. So if you open this up, take up the bottom of the back seat, you can access the fuel pump, put a hose on there, and then just directly pump fuel into your gas can. You can also disconnect the fuel line under the car and put your gas can under the car and then fill it that way. But what we're going to do is we're going to come to the front. So as you can see here, I've disconnected all of the rear trim. Again, this is the first step for pretty much every DIY, so I won't jump into that in too much detail here, but if you need a better picture of how that works, I'll put a video link in the description that'll show you how to get rid of all the shrouds and everything by the firewall. And then what you basically want to do is disconnect your low pressure feed line coming into your fuel pump, and then we're going to run that line into a gas can. So of course I have the Precision Raceworks high pressure fuel pump, but even with the stock pump, it'll be the same thing. Disconnect the hard line that's going into the fuel pump, and then you'll be able to lift that line and run it into a gas can. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, and this is what we've come up with. So as you can see, the low pressure feed line is coming up and then routing into my gas can. I did use this one instead of the VP Racing style one just because it's a little shorter. And as you can see, my line doesn't have a whole lot of length. I have flex fuel sensor and reflex sensors and stuff extended onto here, so it kind of shortens the overall length of the low pressure feed line. But if you don't have that, if you have a mostly stock fuel setup, then it should extend a little bit farther. But you can kind of see what's going on here. We're just going to pump it directly into the gas can. Now I've got the car disconnected, as you always should when you're working on your fuel system. As soon as I plug in the battery, it's most likely going to prime the fuel pump, And then if you try to, turn on the car, put it in accessory mode or open a door, there are a lot of different things that prime the fuel pump. So it's going to start filling up fuel as soon as you do that. Just make sure you have all of this ready. Make sure you have it all secure, because fuel is going to start coming out and you want to make sure that it all goes into your gas can. All right, I changed my mind. So what I realized is this connection on top of the low pressure fuel pump is the exact same connection that's in your engine bay. So your stock fuel line that plugs into, there's like a hard line coming up into the engine bay where your low pressure fuel comes in. It's that exact same connection. So if you take that whole fuel line that's going to your high pressure fuel pump and plug it in here, it just snaps right in. So this is kind of the way that I'm going to do it. This is actually my Dorch high pressure fuel pump fuel line. I just had an extra one. So plug that into the low pressure fuel pump. I like that it's able to go deeper into this fuel jug because it's going all the way inside, so I have a lot less risk of spilling. And even though it sounds weird, I'd much rather spill a little bit of fuel on this floor mat that I can clean up versus potentially spilling fuel in the engine bay. So either one works, but this is going to be my preferred method just because it's a little more secure and puts a little less risk of things if the fuel were to spill. Now, of course, you can keep trying to prime the system, unlocking, locking the doors, letting the car go to sleep, all of that stuff, and it'll keep squirting out. But the easiest way to get this done, the quickest way to get this done, is to manually trigger the fuel pump using ISTA. So put that software on your computer, and then we're going to activate the fuel pump, and that will just continuously flow fuel through the line that we pulled off of our low pressure fuel system, and that will pump it into our fuel jug. So I'll go ahead and show you guys how to do that now. So the first thing you're going to want to do is connect to ISTA using your Ethernet cable. So plug into your car's OBD port, plug in the network connection to your laptop, and then go ahead and click on complete identification. That'll scan the entire car to make sure that it identifies all of the modules that your car has. Then you're going to go to the control unit tree that should pop up and find the DME control unit and click on that to go into the DME options. Once you're there, you're going to click on component triggering, and under the general section, you'll click on electronic fuel pump, and that will give you the option to manually trigger your fuel pump. Now, before you click on it, double check everything, make sure the fuel line is secure, put some towels down underneath your jug if you need to, whatever you need just to make sure that you don't have any issues with this process. If you have a friend, awesome, make sure that they're holding the fuel line so nothing moves when the fuel pump turns on. And then once everything is ready, go ahead and click on trigger component. And as soon as you click on it, you should hear the fuel pump turn on. It'll sound like this. And then if you click trigger component again, you should hear the fuel pump turn off. So it'll sound like this. And it's really that simple. So go ahead and turn on your fuel pump to run it as long as you need to get the fuel down to a level that'll work for the job you're doing. Now, this process does take a little while. It pumps pretty slowly, so just give it some time. But there are a couple big benefits here. Again, the fuel pump will be able to pull fuel from both sides of the tank, so you should be able to pretty much get it all the way to empty. I got it to about halfway before I got fed up. It flows really slowly, but do as much as you need depending on the job that you're working on. I'm installing a low pressure fuel pump, so I just wanted a little bit less fuel in the tank so I don't spill more than I need to. The other thing is that the BMW manual specifically states that you don't want to run it below a quarter tank. And the reason is because there is a risk of potentially running the fuel pump dry. So if there's not enough fuel in your fuel tank, the fuel is what is cooling the fuel pump. So if that's running without the fuel around it, then it can overheat and potentially fail. So definitely don't run it below a quarter tank. While you're filling it up, you can keep an eye on your jug to make sure that it doesn't overfill, but you can also keep an eye on your fuel level in your fuel tank. So that's going to drop as you continue pumping fuel, and just make sure that before it gets to a quarter of a tank, you turn off the fuel pump. But yeah, once you get to that point, everything should be good to go. If you're swapping out your fuel tank or replacing your fuel pump like me, or just trying to switch over to E85 or something really quickly, this is definitely the best way to get all of the fuel out of your tank. If you've got bad gas and stuff like that, this will flush out the system so you can fill it up with fresh gas, whatever fuel you want to run, and then get you back on the road. So hopefully this DIY helps. Let me know if there's anything else you guys want to see in this kind of realm of DIYs and stuff, because I'm definitely trying to do more stuff with ISTA and diagnostics and running these service plans and things that will allow us to, get the most out of our cars. So let me know what else you guys want to see, but otherwise I think that's it for this video. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps. And if you have any other questions or comments, leave them down below.